The Israeli Defense Forces are using Palestinian civilians as human shields, and that is according to a new explosive report in the New York Times. In fact, they detail specific instances. Now, this investigation by the Times found that Israeli soldiers and intelligence agents with Israel have regularly captured Palestinians to conduct all sorts of life-threatening reconnaissance missions to essentially avoid putting the lives of IDF soldiers at risk. Now, Palestinian detainees have been coerced to explore places in Gaza where the Israeli military believes that Hamas militants have prepared booby traps or a possible ambush. They've also been coerced to film within the underground tunnels or enter buildings that have been rigged with mines. The practice, by the way, I should note, is absolutely illegal under both Israeli and international law. In fact, back in 2005, the Supreme Court in Israel banned this practice, saying this is against our morals, this is against who we are as Israelis. We are banning this practice. The IDF is not to use Palestinians as human shields. 2 years later, the BBC and Cenk Uygur reported on this. This is in 2007.
This was Nablus last week. Israel's army came to arrest men they accuse of plotting attacks against Israel. We filmed as the soldiers moved through the old city, but now details are emerging of what else was going on. Look at the man in the black top in this rare footage filmed by a news agency. He's a Palestinian civilian. The soldiers push him ahead of them as they search homes. Jihan Dadouche says she was also forced to lead soldiers through the old city during last week's operation. She is 11 years old. They had their weapons pointed at me, she said.
I was so afraid that the soldiers might do what they threatened, take me to jail or shoot me.
So the footage is from Nablus in 2007, but the story was reported and the video, I believe, was leaked in 2009, and Cenk had covered it on TYT. That's why the video is so pixelated. But the same practice continues today, according to this reporting from the New York Times. The Times interviewed 7 Israeli soldiers who observed or participated in the practice and presented it as routine, commonplace, and organized, conducted with considerable logistical support and the knowledge of superiors on the battlefield. I'll get to specific examples in just a moment. Cenk.
Yeah, so first I want to give credit to those Israeli soldiers that came forward with moral compunctions and told the press, this is terrible, we shouldn't be doing this. So I love people like that and I appreciate that. And thank God there's still people like that inside Israel. And so save as many people as you can. Save as many Palestinian lives as you can. Hide them in basements, hide them in attics. But if the IDF gets them, they're gonna use them as human shields. Children, they've been doing it for decades. Did you ever see it in American news? The Supreme Court ruled on it, as Anna told you. That's a big story. Did you see it in American news? Then they did it anyway after the Supreme Court told them not to. Did you see that in American news? Or did you hear in American news that Hamas uses human shields? Do they actually do what the soldiers you just saw on the tape do, put them in front of them? Is that what they mean by Hamas uses human shields? No, they don't mean that. They say, well, generically. I mean, we had to kill the Palestinian civilians because they were in the general areas, Hamas, so we'll call that, what do we do? Oh yeah, remember how we used the human shields and the Palestinian kids to get killed first? Oh, we'll say Hamas is using human shields. Now guys, let me ask you something. Where do you think, whether you hate them or love them, whether you think they're terrorists or not, right? Where do you think, and I'm not talking about Hamas, I'm talking about any resistance group. And if you think Hamas is not they can be both a terrorist group and a resistance group at the same time, like the African National Congress was. They did acts of terrorism, but they were obviously resistance to apartheid, right? So where do you think a resistance group would go?
In a remote location, far away from any possible civilians.
And set up a giant military complex, right? Because then the oppressing, occupying force will know where they are and they could kill them immediately. And so I'm sure that's exactly what they would do. No, every resistance force, including the French resistance against the Nazis, hid. They hid. Where did they hide? They hid in their homes. They hid where they live, which is in the middle of civilians. So then the Nazis came and killed civilians around the French resistance and said, why? They said, we have a right to defend ourselves. And these French terrorists are in the civilians. But they didn't think of the clever turn of phrase of human shields. The reason it probably popped into Israel's mind in order to help them do propaganda as they slaughter tens of thousands of civilians is because they use human shields.
So let me flip it for a second. I want people to really consider this thought exercise, if you want to call it that. So obviously someone like Yoav Gallant, the military minister in Israel, is an enemy, considered an enemy of Iran's, right? So if they engage in war, if there is now a full-blown war between Israel and Iran, if Iran decides we're gonna take out Yoav Gallant and a bunch of civilians die as they do so, does Israel get to complain about the civilians dying if Yoav Gallant was among the civilians?
Well, first of all,
God forbid, by the way.
Yeah, of course, we don't want that at all. We don't want any of these deaths. We want an immediate ceasefire, peace deal, end the occupation. There's an easy solution to this. They're like, oh, we can't find the solution. End the occupation. There, I solved it for you. You can't be that dumb. Oh, no, the Palestinians and the Arabs are savages, and they'll always want violence and war.
But I want to know.
You want violence and war. Why don't you just admit it for the first time in your life?
But I want to know, does the international community then have to accept an argument from Iran that all of those innocent civilians died because Yoav Gallant used them as human shields? I'm serious.
No, but by the way, Iran would be, as you're pointing out, doing the same exact argument as Israel. And the US would then turn around and say, terrorists, we told you Muslims, you have to kill them all. You see, they're either terrorists or future terrorists. But wait a minute, they did the same exact thing as Israel. No, Israel's a moral army. So when they use human shields and they put bullet holes in children's heads, as the New York Times reported yesterday, earlier, in order a percentage of children coming back with bullet holes in their head in the Gaza Strip. No, they're the moral army because moral people murder children with headshots with snipers. Moral people use children as human shields where they could step on a booby trap and blow up the kid. You know, at one point, the commanding, and this is important, guys, the commanding officers are telling soldiers, some of them happy to do it, some of them, as I told you, amazing human beings who said they don't want to do it, right? But they tell them, you must use them. And they say, well, look, we could get a drone or a dog, but it's gonna take a while. And they're Palestinians. They literally said their lives are not as important as our lives.
So let's talk about the specific individuals whose lives don't matter at all for the IDF and have been used as human shields. Luckily, these individuals remained alive to tell their story. So the reporters here spoke to Mohammed Shubeir, who was detained by the Israelis for 10 days before they released him without charge. It is a common practice. Now, the Israelis killed his father and then his sister before separating him from the remaining family members who survived. But while he was detained, Shubeir, then 17 years old, said he was forced to walk handcuffed through the empty ruins of his hometown, Khan Younis in southern Gaza, searching for explosives set by Hamas. To avoid being blown up themselves, the soldiers made him go ahead, Shubeir said. The soldiers sent me like a dog to a booby-trapped apartment, he said, a high school student at the time. I thought these would be the last moments of my life. Then you have another individual that gave direct statements to the New York Times here, Bashir al-Dalu, who is another example. Dalu is a pharmacist from Gaza City. He said he was forced to act as a human shield on the morning of November 13th after being captured at his home. The soldiers ordered him to strip to his underwear, then handcuffed and blindfolded him, he said in an interview in Gaza after his release without charge. Now, he was ordered by the soldiers to enter the backyard of a nearby 5-story home, or building, I should say. The yard was littered with all sorts of debris, bird cages, water tanks, gardening tools, broken chairs, shattered glass, and a large generator. Behind me, 3 soldiers pushed me forward violently. They were afraid of potential tunnels under the ground or explosives hidden under any object there. Walking barefoot, he cut his feet on these shards of glass, he said. With his hands tied behind his back, al-Dalu was ordered to walk around the yard, kicking bricks, scraps of metal, and empty boxes. At some point, the soldiers tied his hands in front of him so that he could easily shunt suspicious objects in his path. And then finally, they wanted him to basically move the generator because they suspected that the generator was covering an entrance to a tunnel. And he was terrified. Like, obviously he's scared. He's scared that there might be a bomb that he steps on, might kill him, but they kept pushing him with the butt of a rifle. Later that day, he said he was ordered to walk in front of an Israeli tank as it advanced toward a mosque where soldiers worried they would encounter militants. Some of the neighbors were taken to look for tunnel entrances at a nearby hospital. And he has not seen them since. So some of the people that he personally knew who were also forced to act as human shields for the IDF have disappeared, doesn't know if they survived or not.
So they have different names for different kinds of human shields that they use. So the ones that are detainees inside Israel, that it requires a couple of days to get them, they're called WASPs. And civilians that they use inside Gaza are not detainees, not terrorists, and they know it, pharmacists, high school kids, etc. They call them mosquitoes. Let's pause here to note that they're using the names of different bugs to refer to Palestinians. They have become everything they despised. Okay, but then sometimes they don't want to wait for a drone or a dog to arrive because sometimes they use that. So they're like, oh, let's just use a Palestinian, a civilian, a kid, because we don't want to wait for a drone, and their lives are obviously not anywhere near as valuable as Israeli lives, which apparently are the most precious thing on earth.
Yeah, let me give you a quote from an IDF soldier who spoke to the Times. They were all considered expendable, an IDF soldier said. If the tunnel explodes, at least he will die and not one of us, he recalled an officer saying.
Well, he's just a mosquito, lower than a dog. So who cares if the bugs are crushed? So, and by the way, I put stuff like this on social media and wall-to-wall comments from Israeli supporters going, of course, super proud. They're lower than dirt. They shouldn't have started this. It's their fault. They're savages. They're violent. They had it coming. I'm so proud of Israel. If you are, there's something deeply wrong with you. You've become a monstrous immoral person. Okay, so now this is systemic. The commanding officers are ordering it. Some of the soldiers are objecting. Systemic. Israel knows that they're doing this. Meanwhile, they have all their propaganda dogs all over television going, oh, Hamas is using human shields. I mean, well, that's what we call their civilians if we're not calling them bugs. And so we had to kill all their civilians, but they know that Israel's actually using human shields, literally. And they're like, who cares? They're just Palestinians. We fund all this. And finally, experts in the piece in the New York Times, and before it was easy to, a lot of people in America, especially in the establishment, this makes them uncomfortable. They love Israel and they don't want to be, or their friends love Israel, or their donors love Israel, whatever it is, right? And they didn't want to be made uncomfortable. So they just deny. Oh, you can't believe Arabs. You know how they are. They're lower than us. You can't believe anything they say. We're the righteous ones. So now even the New York Times has debunked every one of their talking points and shown that Israel is doing what they say is terrorism. I don't mean the New York Times. Israel says using human shields is terrorism, right? Killing civilians is terrorism. Targeting them on purpose, targeting journalists, medics, etc. All terrorism, all what Israel's doing. So Israel's obviously a terrorist state. If that hurts your feelings, you should be super mad at Israel, not us or the New York Times for reporting the truth. And so go check yourself, because you've lost touch with morality and decency. And the experts in the New York Times piece said, no other country on earth does this. There is no documented other government, as vicious and horrible as some of the other governments are. No one uses human shields. This, to take a human being, an 11-year-old girl, 17-year-old boy, and say, here, step on a bomb, you bug, you're lower than dirt, and who cares if you die? That takes a special kind of depravity. This is what happens when you give anyone or any government absolute power. And that is what we've done here in America, and we should be deeply ashamed for how we have helped Israel commit war crime after war crime and acts of terrorism after acts of terrorism. One of the worst terrorist states in the world by far right now.